Hello, friends. The mother that we are about to meet is nothing short of amazing. She is going to walk us through her mothering journey that includes a traumatic experience with law enforcement and her 10-year-old son, and how she took that moment that was so jarring to her and made it an opportunity for advocacy so that other families would not experience what she experienced. Devon is an advocate. Devon is a champion. Devon is remarkable. After the intro, we are going to dig into Devon's mothering journey. Good morning, Devon. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. So, I want to hop right into your mothering journey story. Can you start us off? Tell us about your story, Devon.
Um, Mothering journey. Kyle. I have a 12-year-old named Kyle, who was diagnosed with autism when he was three years old.
Mhm,
Um, Initially, Kyle, when he was about two, his pediatrician
mhm,
said to me that um that Kyle was not hitting a lot of his metrics. And
mhm,
so she was a little worried, and she told me about this place called the Marcus Autism Center here in Atlanta.
mhm,
And she wanted me to get him, take him there to get him tested. Um, from that, well, initially when we got the referral, it took us a year to get into the Marcus Center. This was back in 2014, I think it was. Yeah, 2014. So back then, the Market Center, like their wait list was crazy. I heard it's gotten a little bit better since then, but I'm not sure. It just depends on the program, I think. But from there, we our first visit was 2 hours where we saw a psychologist, and she basically told us from that point, if they suspected anything, then we would have to come back for a 5-hour visit.
okay.
Basically, his pediatrician told me if you have to come back for the 5-hour visit, more likely than not, you're probably going to receive an autism diagnosis.
Right.
Thankfully, my sister was actually with me on the first visit. Um,
Mhm,
we went. I recall like when his doctor, even, when she told me and explained to me that we had to go to this place that I had no idea what she was talking about. It was, I sat in my car for maybe about 30 minutes and cried until Kyle like did the Kyle thing and kicked me in the back. I was like, oh, it's time to go and stop crying. Okay, so so then but luckily my sister was with me that first visit there. And I tell people this, back then for me, it was like the sun shined different on that building. It was like when I walked through there, I just felt the sense of relief, because up until that moment, some of the behaviors and different things like that that Kyle was exhibiting, I
mhm.
had no idea, what was going on with
Can
him.
you tell us what are some of the behaviors that he was exhibiting?
Mm. So Kyle, hitting,
Okay.
kicking, um, like the word no would just set him off. You know, anytime he hears the word no, he would get extremely upset. So,
Mm,
um, for the most part, those were the behaviors that I was seeing in him, and the fact that he was still nonverbal and he was 2 years old.
okay.
Yeah. So from that point, um, we got the diagnosis,
Okay.
right? And so it just, of course I did the Google thing.
Google is a theme in all of these podcasts. While it's a great information source, it is a scary
Yeah.
endeavor for a mother who has a new diagnosis. So
Yeah.
beware, moms. Start here first.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes. Because it's so much information out there, depending on your culture, where you're from,
Mhm.
how you choose to parent. And that was the thing I always say, like, I knew what type of parent I wanted to be. I just knew it, right? But then I get this kid that's like, no, we're going to switch this up a little bit. Like, you have a lot to learn in order to parent me. And so that kind of, I would say that was the start of our autism journey. Yeah.
Okay. So you get the diagnosis. What are your next steps for you? What are you feeling? What are you doing?
Mm. Well, once I received Kyle's diagnosis, educating myself. I read a lot of Temple Grandin, which some of you may or may not know about her, but she's a lady that's on the autism spectrum, but she has like a PhD. She does a lot of talks and things like that. So I went to the library and I checked out like 3 of her books.
Boom.
And so I delved into a lot of things that she was doing or that she said her mom did even back in like the 50s or something, right? So equine therapy was one of those things that I put Kyle in. We started speech, and he here in Georgia they have a program that's called My Babies Can't Wait.
Mhm.
And so Kyle was able to do that program, which helped some because we were able to do like occupational therapy through them. And
Mhm.
and he was able to start like a pre-K program,
Okay.
which we didn't necessarily go to school all day, but I would take him. I literally at the time I was still working full time, so I would get off of work, run to Fairburn. I worked in the city of Atlanta. I would run out here to Fairburn, pick him up from childcare, take him for like 30 minutes or something like that, take him back to daycare, and I go back to work, right? Thank God I had a job at the time that, they were really understanding. So I could make up my time here and there. But for the most part, it was a lot of running, you know, visits, therapists, trying to figure out what was going to work for us at that time.
Right.
Before we started like big boy school.
Okay. Now you eventually made a career shift so
Mm-hmm.
that you would be better able to accommodate Cal's needs and schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about that.
So Kyle started ABA.
Mhm.
ABA is another one of those things. If you go online and you read, you're gonna get all types of different opinions depending on the age. I say a lot, depending on the service providers that people may have encountered. So
Mhm.
for us, it was I stuck with what I knew, which was the market center, right? And so we were on a wait list for ABA for 2 years. So
Mhm.
I knew in that period of being on that wait list that the time was going to come that we were going to have in-home behavior therapy, and that I was going to have to, at some point, possibly stop working if I
Right.
want to get Kyle some help. And so at that point, what I would do is I just started like saving. Um, wherever I could, I would save. Um, we were in like a 1 bedroom apartment. Just whatever the changes that I had to make due to being Kyle's mother.
Right.
I've never, I don't think since he was probably 3, even though I had a full-time job, I never worked a 40-hour work week because it was constant getting off early, and he had speech twice a week. You know, the equine therapy, the occupational, at that time he was still getting in school. But in order for me to completely like do this ABA program, I would probably have missed like three days out of work a week. And so I got the call, he got accepted. That was it. I was like, because for me, it was like, if I have to, because at that time, Kyle, we couldn't go to the grocery store without him having meltdowns, if I would say no, he would just, I mean, his meltdowns were pretty epic, right? And I just remember being in this space where I was always giving him what he wanted in order to just get through an event or get through a store or, get through anything, like just make sure Kyle is happy and, and we should be able to get through this thing. But I recall when we first started ABA and his behavior therapist came, and the first time, I was talking to him, kind of like, giving it to him raw about everything that we had been going through at the time. And he said to me, if you continue to do that, you're going to be doing it for the rest of his life. Right. So his space, far as his behavior therapist, he was just saying to me, like, look, this is what we have to do. If you do everything that I'm asking you to do, or, that needs to be done, we can see a change in Kyle, right?
Right.
And so when we first started, I was just like, this is not gonna work, because Kyle was just running circles around everybody, right? But his BCBA was like, he was a tough cookie. He did not. I mean, he scared me sometimes. Like, I remember one time he came to my home and we were collecting data. I had to do data all week, and, every time there was a meltdown, or if I told him no, or, whatever it looked like, ABC data, which is the antecedent, right? The behavior and the consequence.
So we're
So,
going to stop here and just explain that to families. So ABC observations, antecedent means the thing that happened directly before the behavior.
right.
That's A. B is the actual behavior, what happened, what the child did, or what you did if you're doing it on yourself.
Mhm.
And then C is the consequence. And consequence doesn't necessarily mean negative thing, because oftentimes when we hear consequence, we
Right.
think negative. Consequence is result of behavior. So A, B, C. All right.
Right. Yep. So when he came and I had not completed it one time, right? And he goes, because Market Center with their wait list, they just don't have time to play with parents that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay. So he said to me, he was like, well, let this be the last time, that I come here and it's not completed. Because if it's not completed, I think like twice, like they kick you out the program. Okay.
Boom.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. I mean, like I was more anxious about that than I was Kyle behavior at the time. Like, make sure I got it down. Oh gosh.
I
So
love it.
yeah. So once once that happened, that's when I had to quit my job. And
Right.
so I say the only other thing that I knew how to do was to cook.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I started a catering company. And I've been doing that now full time for about 6 years, 6, 7 years.
Wow.
Mhm.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. You became what you felt your son needed so that he could have potential or the opportunity to
Right.
maximize his personal
Yes.
potential. I love it.
Because
Now,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, because for me it was that's why when I talk to families or mothers who can't make that sacrifice, I never judge or anything like that, because I always say, and I tell them, because I do speak with a lot of moms, just, and I have friends that know people that just got a diagnosis, and they're like, Devon, can you talk to this person or that person? And I always, even in telling them my story, I always say, be mindful, like, everybody that may not have a Richard Lee, which is my dad,
Mhm.
or Anisi, who is my sister, or Shaz, or Asia and Nikki, who are my cousins,
Mhm.
that, have helped me through, these processes. So I always, just kind of like put that out there. Or I recall one time I had a cousin, I just have to tell the story, and I needed help paying my light bill, right? And so
Mhm.
I called her and I was like, I kind of need some help, right? And
Right.
she says, okay, you like cause she's B, my cousin Angela Rell. She's
Mhm.
so she has like this real soft voice, and she goes, okay. And I said, and I'm not gonna be able to pay you back, so can you just like give it to me? And she was like, okay, but I had to be in that space where I was, because before that I was prideful.
Right.
and didn't necessarily ask people for anything, because even when I didn't have couch, I was like 33.
Okay.
So for me, a lot of my cousins and family members had kids younger. So I was out there living like they were being mothers. And
Right.
so, you know, I was just used to, and I've never been a selfish person. I've always been a giver, but I've just never been in that space where I needed anyone, right?
Right.
So if you've been on this earth for 35, 36 years, and like, from your parents to just becoming an
Mhm.
adult and not necessarily needing people,
Mhm.
sometimes pride can get in the way, and you can suffer a lot more than you don't have to, because
Mhm.
sometimes people are in the space where they're willing to help, you know.
Right.
You just have to be able to ask for it when you need it. And so
Ooh.
I, through that process of, like, being a well, um, yeah, I always say I'm a single stay at home mom, but through that process, I was literally having to depend on my family a lot. And I know a
Mhm.
lot of people don't have that, so I'm thankful and I'm grateful every day for our support system. Kyle has a caregiver that he's had since he was 2.
Mhm.
So many people say they love a child like it's their own, but
Mhm.
she loves my son like
Mhm.
it's her own. It's almost like sometimes I get emotional about it, because mm, I don't know where she came from, and it's like, we're so thankful to have her, because I really don't know where we would be now without Miss Hazel. So yeah.
Brain power. I love how you spoke about building community because um, this is certainly not something that you can do alone.
Right.
Much like you, I'm a very independent spirit. And
Mhm.
in addition to that, I don't have strong familiar ties. So I don't have a relationship with my mother, nor do I have a relationship with my father.
Mhm.
So with that, that means Ricky too doesn't have the cousins and the
Mhm.
maternal grandmother and grandfather. So one of the things that I had to learn to do, and has now become one of my superpowers, is build villages. I
Mhm.
had to learn how to tell people I need help and then ask them if
Mhm.
they help me, because with me, I'll figure it out for L. But for
Right.
Ricky too, I didn't want him to have to wait. I didn't
Right.
want him to have to wait until I figured it out, because he needed it now. And if there was someone who could help me now and
Mhm.
my baby needed it now, I have learned to push all that pride down and say, "Can you help me help my baby?"
Yes.
And with that, over the years, it gets easier. So, moms, if you are out there and
Mhm.
you're like, I don't ask people for things, I grew up in a place where I've been now conditioned to do things myself. No, that first time, you may have a lump in your throat when you ask. But when
Mhm.
you see that your baby moved forward because you asked somebody to help you with something that you were not yet able to do, it gets easier the next time. Now, I'll walk up on anybody about my baby. Excuse me.
Yeah, you have to be intentional about, like, fostering a village around.
Right.
Because I mean, there's no way that me and Kyle would be where we are now, if we didn't have the village that we have. I mean, like, I say all the time when people say, "Are you gonna, like, you should write a book?" And I'm like, my village alone has a book by sales, really, because it's amazing. Like, you can't write it, you can't think it. It's not even something that I can be honest about, that I even prayed about a lot, right? But it just given to me. So yeah, we're thankful.
Wow. So you not only created a village for Kyle,
Mhm.
you know, with service providers and extended family, but you also now have it where, you know, your neighbors and such knew who Kyle was or is, and they, you know, made sure that he was okay.
Mhm.
However, there's an incident you had happened in your neighborhood that was rather jarring. Would you mind going into that?
Sure. So it was actually, we were at Miss Hazel's, where I said, Kyle has been since he was 2. But people in her neighborhood, they know Kyle.
Right.
So he she was getting ready. She has a home child care, and she was getting ready for a graduation for her kids. And so we were in and out the house. Kyle was on his bike. So Kyle's been riding his bike in her neighborhood for years, right? That's where we actually go for him to, ride his bike. So he's been riding his bike over there for years. And he could go 3 houses to the left and 3 to the right, and he just had to, circle it. And so Kyle knew, he couldn't go too far. He knew where to go. And 9 times out of 9, we were always outside with him anyway while he was riding. And he would test you. I mean, it's Kyle. Okay. So he's going to test you. So it's like, I'm going to go a little, Kyle, come back. I'm going to go a little bit further. Kyle, come back. So this day though, cause now, it's like, he's been doing this for a while. We give him a little trust, and so we're going in and out the house, just, in and out, in and out. Well, the last in and out, I'll say, I went in the house and we heard a horn, like a loud horn. And, Miss Iola was like, what's that, sound or whatever. And I had just walked in the house. I saw Kyle on the bike go up the hill or whatever. And I just walked in the house to use the bathroom. And so Miss Hazel was like, well, I'm going to go look. I'm going to go check on Kyle. And I said, oh no, cause she was like in the kitchen. I said, I'm almost out the bathroom. I'll go, outside and check on him. Well, when I come out of the bathroom and I go to the door, she has a glass screen door. Kyle was standing there with 2 cops beside him. His one hand was behind his back, and they were trying to put the other behind his back. And I just screamed, right? I screamed and I was like, what is going on? Like, what are y'all doing? And they said, is this your son? And I said, yes. Like, what are y'all doing? And then they asked if I think one of the officers said, does he have autism or can he talk or something like that? They said. And I said, no, like he has autism. I was like, he has autism. They immediately uncuffed his hand. And, it's like when I got to that door, and it was like it was in July. And so I think it was the 4th, like July the 14th or 15th. And when I got to the door, Kyle was just like his face was just in shock, and he was sweating. And, I said, like, it's literally like a nightmare. I'm not going to lie. Like, cause I see his face a lot in my dreams and stuff when I do dream about it, or think about it. But, okay. So he was at the door, they let him go. And then they started talking to us, kind of like telling us what happened. And that they had received a prowler call that Kyle had went into someone's yard. And I think he was like walking around the house, may have looked in a window or something. Then I'll say later on we found out when we actually went to the neighbor's house. So the neighbor literally was like 3 doors down across the street. Miss Hazel thought that she knew who lived there, but I guess like some new people were there, and we didn't know that or whatever. But when we went to the door and we asked her, like, like what happened, and so she said that Kyle actually came up to her door and he knocked, but he ran down and ran back off, got on his bike or whatever, I guess once she opened the door. But as we kind of like figured out later that I think she had a baby. She had a baby in a car seat, and the baby had like a doll that we think Kyle wanted.
So how old is Kyle at this time?
He was 10.
He's 10 years old.
Yeah, maybe about 80. Was he? I don't even know if he was like 80. He might have been 80 pounds.
So you said that there was like Kyle is described as nonverbal.
Yes.
And you said that during that time that Kyle said a word.
Oh yeah. Okay. So after after the incident or whatever, we ended up I had, contacting people. I went to, it was Juneteenth, I'll never forget. And so here in Atlanta on Juneteenth, they closed stuff down. Okay. So I went to the police department. At that time, they were in another space. I went there and I walk in and I say to the officer, I need to speak to, you know, someone about an incident that happened with my son. And so she said, we're closed. I mean, she was a sweet lady, I promise, but she was like, we're closed. And I said, oh, okay. I was like real calm. I was like, I'll come back tomorrow, you know, and I had Kyle with me. And so she said to me, she said, well, an incident with what child? You know, thank God she was nosy. You know, she wanted to know what was going on. So she's like, an incident with what child? And I said, oh, this one. And she said, that baby? And I said, yes, ma'am. And so she says, oh, I'll get somebody to, you know, hold on a second or whatever. So she found someone for me to talk to. I ended up talking to, I think it might have been a, you know, I don't know, lieutenant captains and stuff like that. But I ended up talking to someone, giving them, you know, I had the incident. I asked them for the incident report.
Mhm.
And I don't think it was completed at that point. So they had to go talk to the cop and figure out what happened and everything. And so um, we left. You know, I gave him my number. We were talking through, you know, through text and talk or whatever. And then we left and went to North Carolina for like 2 weeks because I just was like,
Mhm.
you know, I couldn't, I just wanted to get away. And, you
Yeah.
know, I go to my dad's house, my dad and my aunt, it's like Kyle just has the freedom to still be Kyle. You know, he can ride his bike, he can stay outside for hours at a time because they don't have anything but yard. And so I wanted to kind of get him, because I feel like if we would have stayed in Atlanta, I would have had Kyle right here. Right.
Right.
And he
Mhm.
enjoys the summer. He knows in the summertime we go to granddaddy house and we, you know, hang out. So I wanted him to get away. Well, as I was gone and I come back, I get a call saying that, because I wanted to see the body cam footage, because like I told
Right.
them that I need to know exactly what happened so that I can know, like, if Kyle is about to, like, for his behaviors and different things like that, I can know
Right.
what to look for, what I need to help him with and everything. So, because at that time I still wasn't thinking like, uh, I don't know, I wasn't, you know, of course, any and everybody I talked to, like, you need to call a lawyer. But God just hadn't put that on me yet, you know,
Right.
like it was
Right.
where I needed to do my own work first and then
Right.
go. So I received a call stating that they could not, um that they couldn't see the footage. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, you know. So I know somebody that knows somebody, right? And
Mhm.
I called him and he's like, hey, now if I call this guy, like, he's an activist here in Atlanta, he was like, you know, I think he can make some calls for you, but do you, you know, do you want to ramp this up basically? And I was like, give me his number, you know? And so, so he gave, his name is Marcus Coleman. He gave me his number. I called him and um, he reached out to the chief of police, Chief Meadows. And as soon as I got off the phone with Marcus, I'm assuming he called Chief Meadows, and Chief Meadows, like, I was in Walmart, I remember, in the ice cream aisle, because Kyle loved popsicles. You know, it's like I got where I was and I was talking to people, but I was like coming out of the ice cream aisle and I got another call and I was like, hello. And it was Chief Meadows. And he called me. He said that that was, you know, like, he had just learned of what had happened, and that, you know, he was going to call me in. They were going to check and see if they could find the body cam footage, you know, go through all of that, and then he would let me know. And from that point, I mean, it was quick. They got the footage. They set up the meeting. I go to the meeting, and at the meeting, I saw the body cam footage, right? And so I was able to see everything basically, you know, how Kyle, like, was on his bike, how, you know, the first interaction where, you know, the cop, I guess he was trying to get Kyle to stop too.
Mhm.
And Kyle wouldn't stop, you know. And so Kyle didn't stop until he got to Miss Hazel's home. But when he got to the house and they got out the car and Kyle got off his bike, the officer, like, so they were standing outside, but we were in the house. So we didn't, you know, we didn't see,
Right.
the interaction. And, you know, from the footage, it was like maybe a minute, like I said, a minute and maybe like 15, 20 seconds before I got to the door. But which in itself, just stopping myself there, is like, that just goes to show you sometimes that we literally cannot even take our eyes off of our kids for a minute.
For a
A
minute. A
minute,
minute.
minute. And it's, it's like, even when I see people be so open in sharing their stories about their children with autism, and certain things, the first thing a lot of people say is, well, where were you? Maybe I just closed my eyes, just to blink sometimes and they're gone, you know?
Right.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where you realize, and that was another thing for me, it's like, I literally cannot take my eyes off of this kid for a minute, and this happens, like my worst fear. And so Kyle, when he was doing echolea.
Mhm.
Do you explain what that is?
Yes, echolalia, as for our listeners who may not know, it's repetitive speech. It's not receptive or expressive, so they're not necessarily communicating anything, but they may find a word that they have an affinity for, and they may say it over and over again. For Ricky too, it was Arby's and football.
Oh,
I didn't eat Arby's at the time, but he's like Arby's, 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 football,
yeah,
football, football. He's
yeah.
not talking about Arby's. He's not talking about football. It's just a word that he's echoing because he's heard it.
Mhm. So Kyle was basically echoing the officer saying, "What's your name? What's your name?" And so he says to Kyle, he goes like he was about to like take his arm or something. He's like, "Cause you're gonna have to get in the car." And Kyle, this is my first time saying this publicly, but and Kyle had never said my name unprompted. If I have him to say mommy or mom, it was always I would have to say, if I say, "Hey, Kyle," he says, "Hey, Kyle." And I say, no, I say, "Hey, Kyle, hey," I have to prompt him to say mom. And so he said, he screamed, "Mommy, mommy." Never have I heard him say my name. So what I knew was that he literally said my name out of fear. I had never heard. I mean, yeah, he had never said it unprompted, but he knew to call his mama name.
Praise
He
him.
called
Praise
me.
him.
Yeah, he knew to call me. So from that point, um, they just showed like a little bit more where, how Kyle ended up in the handcuffs, where um he took off running. When he tried to get him in the car, he took off running to the door. And when he took off running to the door, I guess it looks as if, like, maybe, if I'm remembering correctly, like the cop maybe tried to like grab Kyle, and they both fell. And so that's when another officer had pulled up, and she sees that, and she comes down, and I think she was the one who put him in the handcuff. So, and then that's when, they were at the door, and I'm at the door, and like I said, it was a minute and 15, 26, like it happened so fast. But yeah, so that's what I saw from, the actual footage that happened.
Now, you are Devon, Cal's mama.
Mhm.
So what did you do next?
Okay. So we were at that meeting where I was able to see the footage and everything. And I will be the first to say that, like, I because I do have a dry sense of humor, so I joke about everything. And I was like, when I first walked into the room, it was like all these men, right? And I was like, they think they slick. Yep. I mean, they're like tall, like 6'1", taller, and like maybe some of them weren't, but still, they were all like men. And so, so I was like, "Some fool to y'all ain't slick. Y'all know what y'all doing." So, but no, seriously, they were there, and they were all so like compassionate though, and not like fake. I'm serious.
Mhm,
One even, they were emotional about what they had just saw. A few of
mhm,
them, right? Some had one had a daughter with autism, one had a nephew, and so it kind of hit home for a few of them, seeing what had transpired. And so when they cut the video off, they just asked like, what do you want? Like, what do you need us to do? And, those types of things. So my first thing was, what is your training? How do you train your officers? Because clearly we could see that he missed every sign that there could have been, from Kyle not even just telling him his name. And I get it, like, because even from one of the reports, it was like they kind of assumed he was being a smart aleck, you know,
Mm,
because he wouldn't give him his name. He was just like, "What's your name? What's your name?" But they, it's just like it didn't register at all. And
right.
so I asked what was their training. And at the time, the South Fulton Police Department only had a 2-hour autism and de-escalation training, which is a like independent online course that they were doing.
Right.
So to me, that wasn't enough, clearly, right? Because of what we had just experienced. But from that point, I asked for a training. Like that was the initial thing I asked for. Like, what can we do? How can we, better train officers so that this does not happen to another mother again, like, or family.
Mm,
And so, the email started and everything, and Chief Meadows called and was like, he had Mr. Bart, who was a previous police officer, and he had a child on the autism spectrum, and he had now became like a trainer. And I
mm,
think initially, like, most of his trainers were out of Florida because that's where I think he lives.
mhm,
But that's what he was going to come and get to train his officers, and they were going to train them for like 5 hours. So 5 hours. So
boom.
they now, because of the incident that happened with Kyle, the South Fulton Police Department now has a 5-hour in service, mandatory autism training. Yeah. They now have a training. So,
So
um,
let's stop right there for a second. You did that.
hmm.
You did that.
Yeah.
You had a moment that was traumatic for you and for your son, and you said, "I don't want any mother
Hmm.
to experience
Hmm.
what I've gone through."
Right.
You did that. That's advocacy.
Yes. Yes. It is best. Yeah. And so yeah, we did the first 5-hour training. It was so crazy that day because I had a catering. Lieutenant Williams was like, "You on your way, right?" And I'm like, "Oh, I gotta be there." And like, yes, like you need to come. And I was like, "Oh," and I'm like, "But I got," I'm thinking I got a catering gig. Like I'm telling you, that was nothing. God was just shifting minutes that day. Okay, and so, so he told me, he's like, "Yes, you gotta come." And I just remember thinking about my hair. Like I'm like, I looking crazy.
And they have all those big, strong 6'1" officers there.
Now I got okay. Hmm. But but so we ended up um getting, so I went to the training, okay. And they had me speak to the officers and everything, like one of the classes that they were holding that day. And they were like, "Where's Kyle?" And I'm like, "Kyle needs to be here." Like, Kyle is at school. So, because let me tell you something, I don't take Kyle out of school for nothing, like, unless he has to be out of school.
Right.
So they was like, "Where's Kyle?" So I'm like, "Okay, I gotta find Kyle." So I mean, it was crazy ill. So I get Miss Hazel, her son, and her mother. They go pick Kyle up from school and they bring him to the police department, and so they were able to meet him. And I'll say this too, because it kind of it just like warmed my heart. Like when I got there, it was some officers sitting out, and just chilling or whatever, because they had a break. And so they said, "Is that's Kyle?" And I said, "Yeah." And then they, but again, they were shocked because they just looking at this little kid and they was like, "Oh, he really the reason why we in this 5-hour training?" Because I think it was just shocking to them that the incident happened with this little scrawny little kid, like. But yeah, I'm like, "That's Kyle." And then, you know, they had the officers to meet Kyle, and he in there like, I mean, Kyle is hilarious, but to me, like, like, yeah, I know what y'all here for, you know. And he's like, I look to the back, I'm like, where's Kyle? He in the back taking a selfie with a female cop.
Get it, Cal.
Yeah, he's in the back taking selfies. I'm like, Lord. And I wish, you know, to this day, I wish I could find who she is so I could get that selfie, because it brings me joy, like, you know, to think about it. And but yeah, and like, you know, it was a news story, so I had to speak, you know, to the news station and stuff like that. But so after that, um you know, it became mandatory. You know, Chief Meadows kind of told them, you know, why, and that this was going to be something that the police department had put into effect, and it would be happening every year. You know, for their new officers coming in, they have to be trained. So, yeah, so that was a change that we were able to, you know, help make with the South Fulton Police Department. And if you do you want to keep going about what else?
Yes, because I want. Wasn't there a development with bands?
Yes. So we had been talking about like a locator, right? Like a project lifesaver, which is in a lot of different
Mhm.
places, I think maybe departments and stuff like that. But um that was one of the other things that I wanted. That somehow if a child was to elope or you know, get away from their family and they don't know where they are, because even in thinking about that day, I'm like, Kyle could have went further than, you know, they could have been just one of the days where he's like, you know what, I'm gonna just take a joyride, and we
Right.
would have been like devastated, you know.
Mhm.
But but I do, even, you know, we're constantly seeing stories where children with autism are walking off, their family can't find them, and different things like that. So um we the South Fulton Police Department, and along with JC Sebastian, who is a city councilman here in South Fulton, I started talking to him, and Kyle received a proclamation. He has Kyle's Day of Awareness in South Fulton, and in the city of South Fulton here in, you know, the metro area. And so when we went for the proclamation, the city council actually, they voted on the project Lifesaver too. And
Mhm.
so now we're in the process of just the money has been allocated for it, but there's
Mhm.
still a process in getting that done. Just yesterday I sent another email out like asking like, hey guys, what's up, Date? What are we doing here? You know, like just trying to see like when can we, you know, hopefully my hope is to try to roll it out, you know, in April during Autism Awareness Month. But
Mhm.
even if not, whenever it comes, like I'm just
Right.
intentional about, you know, everybody still like um figuring out the process of how they
Mhm.
want it to be done, because essentially with the bracelet, what it'll do is that if you know, parents will have to go to the police department to get it, right? And
Mhm.
then they will be able to locate those kids if they ever wander off or
Right.
anything like that. The police department will be able to do that. And then they'll also know like, I'm looking for a child with autism. So maybe
Right.
at that point too, if they encounter the child, their training that they
Right.
now are, you know, receiving will help them when they have to encounter them also.
Boom. Now, something you said pinged my ear, and so I want to spend some time on elopement, because oftentimes you did talk about how some people say, "Well, watch your kids."
Mhm.
Um, like for Ricky too, he doesn't even realize that I still have tracking devices on him. Because it looks
Right.
like Life 360, it looks like cell phones, it looks like Apple Watches, it looks, but
Mhm.
all of those things are there, not AirPods, Airbuds, or whatever they're called.
Mhm.
Those are there because I can, on my phone, track wherever he is
Yeah.
at any given time. And while I know that parents are concerned by and large for their children's, day-to-day movement, considering we know all the dangers are in the world. But for parents of children on the autism spectrum, there is another layer to it, and that's the elopement.
Mm.
The the tendency to wander. So to situate how that is, when Ricky too was a little guy, when I would go to the park and I would be there with other mothers, mothers are typically developing children could sit on the bench and,
Mm-hmm.
they could drink their coffee or, have conversations with each other and they could watch their children from their peripheral.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I never was able to sit down with other mothers. I watched his every movement. I was 2 steps behind him at any turn because I knew that something as simple as someone blowing a bubble.
Mm-hmm.
Someone could blow a bubble and my child would just see the bubble and follow it. And it could be something where it just took me a moment to go into my bag to get some chips or something and look up and he would be gone because one, they're stealth. they're quick and they're stealth. With
Yes.
that, and
Yeah.
it's one of those things where sometimes, like typically developing children, they understand the sense of danger.
Mm.
They don't go to this space because of danger. See, their parent, I'm going to say near my mom because being away from her would be dangerous. Some children on the spectrum, actually many children on the spectrum, don't have that sense of danger. There's this insular interest and they just follow it.
Mm.
And so when we think about parents who are just navigating world, you're in grocery stores and you're going to get something off the shelf, you could turn around and your child could be gone.
Yes.
And those are things that your mother wit kind of tells you about
Mm-hmm.
because before Ricky 2 even had his autism diagnosis, and before I even knew what elopement was, because we would say things in education, and these are terms that are no longer used. But when I was teaching way back when in the 90s, they would say, "Oh, this kid's a runner." And so I would just think running was an inclination that that particular kid had. I didn't understand that it was a characteristic of something. So I didn't, even though I was a teacher, I did not know by trade, a stay-at-home mom at the time, I did not know what elopement was. But something in my gut, because during that time I was married, and my ex-husband was away in Iraq. And right outside of our house was a road. And something told me that if I turn my head, this child, I don't think he will go out that door. I think he would unlock the door and go out. It's just something told me. So I went to the military house because we were military housing. I went to the military housing office and I asked them, would they kindly put latch locks on all the doors of the house
Mm-hmm.
up high? And they came in and they did that. And it was the only thing that gave me peace of mind. Like, I didn't know my son had autism, but I always knew it was something. So
Different.
to think that I have a 2-year-old and
Right.
I'm asking people to install latch, those chain latch locks,
Yeah.
because something in my gut tells me that I think my son would find a way out this door and be gone.
Mm-hmm.
So elopement is it's a serious concern for families, and it's one that I'm hoping that allies will hear this and
Mm-hmm.
understand why mothers of children on the autism spectrum are so hyper vigilant.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's life or death for us.
Yeah.
And I also hope with that allies will hear that and say, when we're at engagements or parties, say, well, hey, let me watch such and such. I promise I'll stay on like white on rice,
Right.
so that that mother will have an opportunity to breathe. Because if you don't, I promise you, she's there, but she's not having a good time.
Oh, absolutely not.
She
And
is
I
not enjoying herself. She would much rather be home, somewhere where they're contained and he's safe. Because even now, he's 17, and I probably make people nervous. I'm so jumpy because it's the trauma of it. It
right.
still lives in me, even though he's okay, and on a rational level, I know he's okay. I
Mhm.
spent so many years tethered to him, not because there's a term people use, helicopter mom. No, I wasn't a helicopter mom. I was a aware and hyper vigilant mother
Yeah.
because I needed my son alive and well.
I need
So
to, because I say helicopter sometimes too, but because Kyle, I'm looking at it right now. Kyle, when he figured out that that chime was going on and off, and that's how I knew if he was trying to open the door or not, he would get the chair, push it up to the door, and cut the chimer off. So I
mm,
wouldn't hear if he tried to go outside. So
clever, clever, clever. Look,
like he's done it He's done it several times. And I tell people, like, even when I'm with my family, I remember the first year that like my family kind of started going to like the beach or whatever with each other, my dad's family. And I have a cousin that she loves water too, just as much as Kyle. And I said she's gonna watch him, right? So I can like chill out. Like she'll let him be his little water baby self, and she'll be right there with him. And so I was always intentional too about the spaces that we would go in if we vacation with family or whatever, that we were always around somebody that would watch him like a hawk. I have a cousin, Gabby, like if she's around your kids, she's gonna watch I don't even know how she can do it, but she watch everybody child. Like, like she
Right.
got, so she's looking at everybody kid. But I tell people that I don't like to parent when I'm around other people. He's watched this child, because it gives me a break.
Right.
Because like you said, if I don't have help, I'm just staying home. Like if you
Right.
help me with this kid, we'll see y'all the next time when somebody else feel like watching him while we're there.
Right.
It's not fun for me at
It's
all.
not. It's a lot of work. And even with that, while respite is very important, we need
Mhm.
those times to collect ourselves. With babysitters, it was a long time before I did babysitters. And then when I did finally do it, it was individuals from like the Child Development Center on the military installation where we were, because I was like, how a lot of people can get somebody from the neighborhood to watch their kid. I couldn't do that. I
Right.
needed someone who was trained or someone that I trained. And so, like, when people would hear that, I had a nanny, they would say, "Oh, you had a nanny." But no, I needed a nanny. So
Mhm.
when I separated from my marriage and I was reclaiming my independence, there were times where I was going to need to be out and about. I needed someone who was dedicated to knowing and understanding Ricky too, because
Mhm.
I couldn't pay somebody $15 an hour to watch my child with autism.
Mhm.
I needed somebody who I trained, who came with experience,
Mhm.
who would walk him to school if I had, a meeting in the morning, who would be me, a proxy me.
Right. Right.
And it was because he was 6 years old at the time, and
Mhm.
he had only been verbal for a year at that point.
Mhm.
So there are so many levels to this. It's like so many things that can often be taken for granted are
Absolutely.
things that we have to think about and plan. Thank God I'm a planner,
Mhm.
because I have to write out every step to see if this logistically
And
will
work.
work and keep my child safe.
Mhm. Yeah. And luckily, I'll say, like when you spoke on respite, I again, just back to the village that I have, and Kyle has. It's amazing because even when I think about it, the village that he has here, like our family, I only have like what some cousins that live up here, and we all stay kind of far from each other, like 30 minutes or more, and everybody has their own life. You know how that goes. So, my um Kyle's childcare provider from when he was 2, and then like it's always been like people who I didn't have to explain who Kyle was to in order for them to keep him, right?
Right.
So now he has like his teachers, his educators from he was able to, like when he started first kindergarten, he was able to loop with the same teacher for till she left the school. So she had him up until 5th grade, and he's family. And also someone else who worked at the school with him, who was at the time his categorical, which I'll just say to moms, like that's a one-on-one, which is kind of like a unicorn. Schools don't like to necessarily give them to you, but you have to advocate in order to try, especially depending on your child's behavior. And so because Kyle had an FBA, which is a functional behavior assessment, it allowed us to get a behavior intervention plan, which is a BIP. A lot of times you'll hear. And from that, we were able to ask for a categorical.
Boom.
So, and he's had that since he was in pre-K, if that's any indication sometimes of how Kyle's behavior could be at school. So, but anyway, she is now a part of the village. Like she
Right.
loves, she gets him. So I don't have to explain to her any of his behaviors. She, you know, he's able to spend time with her. And they are able to keep him without incident a lot of times. And
Right.
the, you know, because he's still considered, I don't know, you can't necessarily, well, we still, it's apraxia of speech.
Mhm.
Um, which that was the latest diagnosis that he just received from
Mhm.
his speech therapist, which basically makes it difficult for him to say whatever it is that he needs to say.
Mhm.
So that's what, um, and he's using an assistive technology device, so he doesn't have to have. You know, he's able to use that too when he goes with them. You know, be it whether they understand him or not. So yeah.
Wow. You have had an incredible journey, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm tremendously proud of you. I have
Right.
a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
If you could turn back the hands of time and whisper in the ear of your younger self at the beginning of this journey,
Mm.
what would you say to her?
Be be kinder to yourself on this journey, um you know, that you're about to go on, because I think, just like most moms, you think about everything that you should be doing more of, right? When sometimes it's just not even feasible. You know, I constantly, I mean, I had nights where, you know, like when Kyle's behavior was really bad, I didn't go to bed till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because I just couldn't sleep. Like I didn't even sometimes want to see the next day come because I didn't know what behaviors, you know, how his behavior would be. Just always anxious and things like that. But this is what I always say. I had someone to tell me, um, I was like, you know, it was a day I was having a rough day and I was crying and I was just saying how, um, you know, I just didn't want to do this anymore. Like I was just tired, and you know, being Kyle's mom, it's a lot, you know. And he said to me, my cousin Jeffrey, he said to me, he was like, I said, I just can't see the forest through the trees, like I can't. And he said, Miss Lee, you're not supposed to. That's what faith is. And I said Miss Lee because that's my family nickname. But yeah, but he told me, he said, you're not supposed to. You know, yeah, that's what faith is. And from that day on, I have never said I can't see the forest through the trees anymore, right? Because now I know that it's just about it. And this is, to me, it's a faith, it will test everything you ever thought you knew, you know, everything that, you know, your parents taught you about faith, what it looks like and everything. And I often say that this autism journey is a spiritual one.
Hello, hello. It ain't no way to separate the two.
No,
If there is, I would not be here and sane if
no,
not my relationship with my Father God.
yes,
I promise you, He
right.
is my co-parent. He is
Mhm,
my co-parent. God is my co-parent. I
mhm,
promise you on everything.
mhm.
You can't do this with a rational brain.
You
You
can't.
can't
And
do this with logic alone
mhm.
because you have to believe in things that you can't see.
E-
You have to believe in things when other people are telling you that this is highly improbable.
yes,
It,
yes, yeah.
girl, look.
So that is my thing. Yes, it's just like, and it's, I will say, standing here now as a 12-year-old, you know, Kyle is now 12. Just like his behavior has, you know, ABA shifted everything for us behavior wise, and so we're able to, um, you know, I'm able to say no to Kyle, and he just be like, okay, I guess I can't have it, you
Okay,
know. Yes.
I know that I'm cutting you off because
Okay.
I need you to tell this story.
Okay.
Can you tell the story of ABA no and your time when you used it in the store?
Oh yes. Okay. So Kyle, you know, like I spoke earlier about, we would go in the stores, I was just giving what he wants. And so this particular time after ABA, after we had been in ABA for about maybe 4 or 5 months, And that's important for you to think about the time, because a lot of times we don't see things happening so quick. We're like, this isn't working, right? So I know that we had goals that we had not yet reached, and I was just going by his plan, right? His behavior plan. So we go to the grocery store, and I would tell him no. It's been times I would tell him no. Kyle almost kicked the carts over. Knock stuff off of shelves and everything like that. But this one particular day, we go in the grocery store, and this is how I knew that like everything had kind of changed. We walk in the store, and he wanted his 3 Hot Wheels that he always got, and I looked at him and I said, no, like you can't. And I was waiting, and he just skipped off, and I could not. I was on aisle 5. I'll never forget. I could not get. I was like crying, like I had people. You okay? And I'm like, yeah, just, whew, like, because just being able to tell him no, and that showed me that the sacrifice that I had made, the emotional, the financial, physical sacrifices that I had now made to get my child the help that he needed, it was working.
Praise
And
God.
yeah, and I just would tell him no after that, just to say no. Oh, no, you can't have that. And then I would like take it back to let him get it, but right now you can't. Oh,
Oh, that is I love that story because so often we don't know if what we're doing is working. And then some people will see from the outside looking in like, oh, goodness, she is celebrating it. He just walked from there to there. It's
yes.
those little wins that
Mm,
lets you know, okay, Lord, we still in this game. And when those wins come, whoo, good. There
yeah.
is no, like, literally to this day, there is absolutely no greater feeling than
Yeah.
seeing my son procure a new skill, something he wanted
Absolutely.
to do or something that we aim to do. And then to see him do it,
Yeah.
it is a spiritual experience every
It-
single time.
yeah. It's,
From pottying when he was young, drinking from a straw,
it
to went to see him dance today. It's still the very same. I'm like, he
feeling.
couldn't do that yet a few
Mm,
months ago. And look at him. Look at that brain talking to those body parts. You better
yeah.
get it, synapses. You better get it, neurons. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I body control. Praise God. I cannot describe like in words
Yeah.
that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, he did it
He
again.
did it again.
He
Yeah,
did
Kyle
it.
just actually the other day he gets off the bus, and I guess it was warm. It's warm, so I guess he's like, "Hold on, this feels like spring break weather right here." I don't tell him about spring break, because if he knows that it's coming, he's not gonna stop packing and talking about uh, getting himself together, okay, to go get in the pool. And so he came in and he's like, "Water," because like, yeah, he said water, and I said, you want some water? And I'm like, oh my God, I think I know what he's talking about. So I kind of like ignore it. And then he comes back and he says Amber, which is my niece, his first cousin, because Amber always goes with us. And then I was like, oh, I said Amber, and what, you want some? You want to go to some water with Amber? And then he says pool,
He
and
like, you hear me?
you know what I'm talking about. Then he went and got his device, and he just like water, 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 water.
Don't be playing with me.
Listen, so now it's like I'm showing him on the calendar every day. This is when we go. This is the day, and we're gonna get there, but we're not there yet. So yesterday when he woke up, he said, and he was getting ready for school, and he says, he looks me in my eye. He like got down in my face, like, you see me, right? And he goes, almost there, almost there. I said, yep, we almost there, but we got like 3 weeks left. So I guess I'll tell you that every morning until we get there. We
I
almost there.
absolutely love it. He's putting you on notice. Do
Oh,
not get slip around here. He's like, you hear me. You hear the words that are coming out of my mouth.
yes.
Thoroughly enjoyed talking to you,
Oh,
Deb.
ooh, I thank you for letting me share my story too.
I thank you for sharing it. You are going to bless so many people.
I hope
With
so.
that, oh, you most definitely will.
Mhm.
Are there any closing thoughts that you have? Anything that you want to share? Something that we didn't touch on, and you like, I need some mamas to know this, or I need some service providers, family members, friends, allies. I need them to know this.
Um, because I am so, I would say, dependent upon my village, I would just say, and even if, if there are family members that see this that don't have children with autism, or even the moms, from a mother's perspective, I would say, you know, try and facilitate, build a village around your child. Um, that thing of like, we think that we always have to be, I'm gonna fight, but some people you can, just kind of center yourself and build these relationships with your educators, with your community. A lot of people don't even know their neighbors. Be intentional about that. Like, if you have neighbors, and
Mhm.
introduce to your child, even the kids in the neighborhood, let them know your child. Talk to them about autism. If you have, for family, it can be, a lot of times, I hear the horror stories of families. I've been around moms that say they have people that will keep their neurotypical kid, but not their child with autism. But for me, the thing that has sustained Kyle and I to this point is support.
Mhm.
And so, even if you feel like you don't have it, you can be intentional about trying to foster it into your life. And so
Mhm.
that's what I would say to moms, like, if you don't have it, build it, right, when it
Mhm.
comes to your support system, because they're going to be the ones who, kind of pick you up when you feel like, when you're down, to
Right.
you know to help.
I love that because, the title of this podcast is You Are Not Alone.
Yeah.
I know it may feel like it sometimes. I know this journey can be incredibly isolating, friends,
Yeah.
but I promise you, you are not alone.
Mm-mm.
I promise you, there are good people in this world who want to help, who want to be allies, and many of them don't know how, they don't know what to do, so they don't want to do the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
So we want this podcast to kind of pull back the curtain so that they can see how they can support, and also to let you know that, ask. You are not alone in this journey. There are people in this world who are ready and waiting to help you.
Mm-hmm.
They have spare keys in their pockets to doors that you don't even know exist. If you think your baby needs it, or you think that's somebody you need in your life, reach out to them. You are not alone. But like Devon says, sometimes in this journey, we do have to be intentional about asking for that help, because sometimes we have people who don't know how to approach us because they don't want to offend. They'll help. Like, well, if someone asks me, I'll help. So
Mm-hmm.
just ask, ask, and ask. And your village has expanded because you got me in it now. You got Devon in it. You are certainly not alone.
Yes.
So with that, friends, we are going to say goodbye. And
Ah,
again, thank you.
thank you. Thank
And
you.